let me just get this out of the way because I wrote it down to make sure, because all my friends, they're some of the coolest people in the world, and they have the greatest job titles, which makes them seem even more important in my life than ever. Don't call it senior vice president. I want you all to repeat after me. Executive Vice President of Strategic Business Partnerships. There, I said it, for Cielo talent. And I tell you, this is probably one of the most inspirational women that I've ever been around. I don't tell her that often because she'll get a big head. But this woman has been on our podcast for 2 times before and is a fan favorite. She's one of the most listened to podcasts that we've ever had. And I think the reason why is because she takes the professional side, she takes the personal side, and she takes the fun, adds them all together. And that's why she's the best at what she does in her industry, as a mom, as a wife, and also in the nonprofit side too, which we're going to be talking about. And it's been huge to me, even though my daughter doesn't respond to her texts that she sends out to her all the time. And I asked my daughter the other day at 15 years old, I said, has Aunt Cassie sent you any texts? And she's like, yeah, I got them, but I haven't responded. I said, why don't you respond? She's like, I am inspired by her. I love it, but I just don't know what to say. Because I think a lot of times people get intimidated by accomplishment in life. But when you get a chance to be able to meet Cassie, you'll see that you can have all of those aspects and still have a great time while you're doing it. It's my honor and my pleasure to bring you the Executive Vice President. She told me that too. She said, don't call me senior because you got to make sure that I am the executive of all executives of Strategic Business Partnerships for Cielo talent. And I can't wait for you guys to meet her. Again, a huge inspiration of mine, and happens to be one of my best friends' wives, and to be able to see her as a mother, as a philanthropist, and as an executive. It's my honor and my pleasure to bring Cassie Pike to you. So why don't we get this party started?
Nothing more on my mind. I got 2 shines, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
Hold on. 2,000 employees, 244 clients and counting, 113 countries, 55 languages that she speaks, every single one of them. Please welcome to the podcast none other than Cassie Pike.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you for having me and making me laugh hysterically.
How many of those 51 languages do you speak?
Do we count sign language on occasion?
Do you?
No.
You use sign language?
No.
You don't?
I mean, we did it for a minute. Not really. Like more. Done. No, I only speak English. Isn't that embarrassing?
I don't think it's embarrassing. But tell me how you could take, motherhood, being a phenomenal wife, being a top level executive in a global company, and by the way, you also added philanthropy to it. How are you able to juggle all that?
Oh, well, it's always a balancing act. I don't think it's not like, if I just get the formula right, it's all going to work out perfectly. I think, different points in time might be shining in different areas a little bit brighter, but I also don't call Andrew about any of this. Okay. Just take my word for it. I think that, it really is also about knowing who you are and what drives you. As humans, I think we're all made to serve others and to contribute. But for me, that really, really fills the bucket. So no matter how busy I am or how many things are going on, if I'm not doing that, then I don't feel fulfilled. I mean, my job is fantastic. I get so much reward from it, but when you're getting paid to do a job, that just feels really differently than when you're giving of yourself independently. So that doesn't mean I don't want to get paid for my job. In case anybody's listening.
Well, what she's saying is she wants to cut it in half and she can send the rest this way, which will be good. I accept Venmo, but that amount I probably won't be able to take Venmo from me. They'll think that I'm laundering money. Tell me a little bit about Uplift Milford, because as I was reading about it and we were looking at it, it's providing local families with the short-term support to help prevent long-term hardship. Help me with this, because I mean, honestly, just in that statement, it hit me hard this morning. Made me feel like a bad person though, because I'm not doing that.
Don't feel bad. So the first thing I'm going to say is we're working on our mission statement. We did this big workshop a couple years ago and we thought it was so clear. People don't totally know what we do all the time. So we are working on that. The other thing I would say is don't ever feel bad about what you can do. I wasn't always contributing or serving at this level. This happens to be the opportunity that I found myself and was called to do at this point. But it starts with really small things. So several years ago, actually 3 years ago, a couple of women that I know, I met through volunteering at the boys' elementary school way back when. They continued to volunteer. My kids, I was out of elementary school. They were volunteering and they were running the giving tree and collected all these great gifts. And this one family, this mom, wasn't collecting her gifts. And they're like, come on, we got all these special things for your kids. And well, when it all came together, what they learned was the mom was super embarrassed that she couldn't pick up the gifts because she was living in her car with her kids. And so she didn't have anywhere to put the gifts to hide them until Christmas. So this started a whole series of events. And so first those two women were like, hold on a minute. And there's a whole much to the story why she's homeless and where she's driving. Where we live, if you find yourself in a situation like that, there's nowhere within a half hour that you could go to seek shelter, for example. And so they decided, you know what? We can help her. We can put a roof over her head. So they started fundraising just with some friends. I was one of the people that helped contribute to that. We took care of her. So for an extended period of time, helped keep a roof over her head. But that really started a conversation about, wow, we live in a pretty nice community, but there are a lot of people that don't have it as good as we do. And we could help out with that. So now there's a whole year that goes by. There's a lot of exploration about what path we might take and how we might do it. And ultimately what we landed on is starting our own nonprofit. And the whole purpose of this nonprofit is to help people out, not once you're homeless, because that's a pretty extreme situation and we dream big, but we were kind of like, I don't know if that's our place to help. But what about these people? Because this woman, it was just a series of events that happened that were unfortunate that she found herself in this situation. And so if we could help out when some of those unfortunate things happen, like your car breaks down, for example, and you can't get to work, well, then what happens? Then you lose your job. And when you lose your job, you can't pay your rent. When you can't pay your rent, right? So it's this whole cycle. We're like, well, what if we just helped in that in-between point? And so that was the birth of Uplift Milford. And I am so, so pleased with what we've done. But the biggest thing I'll say is that we've done it because of our community. If you make it easy enough for people, there are so many people that want to give. They're all around. And if you make it easy for them, they will give you lots and lots of money.
So one of the things, Cassie, that you were talking about is, if a person loses their employment or things like that. And I mean, this has been a conversation. I was just talking with Ethan Evans. He was the vice president of Amazon. He actually invented Amazon Prime Video, which when he was telling me this story, I was like, oh gosh, like I had recycled some cans one time. But as I was talking with him, he was talking about different people going into the workforce. There was, depending on who you talk to, either it was really hard to get a job, it was really hard to find people to work in a job. And I was like, well, how can both of those things exist, right? And is it just working off the viewpoint or perspective of the person that you're talking to? Or let's talk about getting a job and then talk about the employers, because most of the entrepreneurs that I know are saying the same thing. I can't get people to work.
Yeah. It's not just entrepreneurs. It is a really interesting challenge because most people looking for work would say exactly what you did. It's hard to find a job. It's a horrible process. I never hear about it. And there's such a shortage of talent. So part of that is the right talent. So having the right skills for the jobs that are available now and in the future. Because I can give you a whole story about where we are headed. This deficit is about to get worse. Boomers are retiring in record numbers. Birth rates have plummeted. We've nearly all had less children than our parents had. And labor force participation is at record lows. So we heard some people in this political season saying, keep jobs in America. And I'm like, holy cow, we don't have enough people here to even do the work, and that problem's getting worse. So why does this exist that people have this feeling? And I think there's several contributing factors. One is, are we prioritizing the right thing? How do you know somebody can do the job? How do you know that somebody can be an entrepreneur? You don't know until they do it, right? And lots of people fail at that. And then lots of people fail a lot of times and get good at that. And so it is, are you looking for a specific education and degree? That's one of the challenges. I'm certainly a proponent of reducing degree requirements where they aren't absolutely necessary. Now, let me be clear. I want my doctor to have a degree. So I'm not saying get rid of all degrees. And I'm also not saying that college degrees don't make sense. My boys both intend to go to college, and there's a whole lot you get from that experience other than a piece of paper. But I don't think that should be the determining factor about whether or not they get access to a job or access to an opportunity. So with the advent of all this automation technology, it's never been harder to know what do you need to put on a resume in order for the technology to say you've got the skills for the job. Because a lot of hiring leaders are pretty archaic in their thinking. Well, I need to see that you've got X experience. If you haven't done X, Y, and Z for this period of time, then you can't do the job. What I'm going to offer up to you is that it does not matter years of experience. I could tell you how many years I've been using technology. And my skills compared to my 16-year-old skills, there's a gap this big. Right? So it's not about years of experience. It's about what the experience has helped you to develop. So we've got a lot of work to do in that area to help find better matches for the people that want to work and the jobs that are available.
So what about, let's talk to both people. Let's talk to the people that are out there looking for jobs that are having this very similar complaint. Oh my gosh, they're afraid of like AI. I'm afraid of AI because it's robbing people of jobs. What do you say to that person? What's your view there?
The jobs that AI is replacing, I would argue, are not the jobs that you want. They're so completely transactional. Automation, AI is not going to replace all our jobs. However, those of us who are leveraging technology and leveraging AI are going to be the ones who are thriving in this environment. And that's a little bit hard coming from someone like me, because the boys would tell you that my technology skills are an embarrassment. That's an exact quote. I should be embarrassed to go to work with my colleagues because I'm so inferior. So for me to embrace AI is quite a journey. I spend every single day practicing, learning something new. So don't fear AI replacing. Think of it as AI is making my job easier. I'm going to tell you, do you know what I hate doing? I love my people. I have 10 people on my team right now. I love them. I do not like writing performance reviews. And in fact, we do quarterly check-ins. So 4 times a year, I have to formally document about their performance. That is not a fun process that people enjoy. It is worthy. It's a good process. You need to make sure you're aligned. But using AI, I can put a few prompts into AI. Hey, here's some things they've done well. Here's what their goals are. Write it for me. Now then I make it my own. I've been fully disclosed to my team when I've done this, but that's a great use of technology. Do you know how long it takes? It takes 10 hours to write 10 check-ins. That's 40 hours a year. And if I can do that in half the time, or probably by next year, I can do it in a quarter of the time, then I can devote my time to doing something else. It's not replacing my job, just a part of it that's not very fun. Now, I don't want AI to deliver the check-in. That's a conversation for us to have, right? But I think changing our perspective.
how can you keep the personal touch too? Because, you'll hear both sides of this argument as far as in the labor side, right? So, I mean, you're placing people all over the world as far as in employment, but they'll talk about the fact that, I need to have this AI. I need to have this technology. And then you'll have the people that say it's all got to be about personal touch, right? It's going to be a renaissance of this personal touch. And then you're like, and then the other side is like, no, you got to take away as much personal touch as possible, add as much AI. How do you know what to put in and where, or is it different based off the industry?
The use cases certainly vary, but what I would tell you is that you don't want to remove the personal touch. However, a human doesn't have to always be the one giving the personal touch. And so the example I would give you of that is for anybody that's out there looking for a job, right? Like, how many LinkedIn messages do you get? I don't know, 5,000, right? Like, you get these messages and, poor person trying to get my attention that's sending me that message, because it's not easy to do, right? Like, how long do you want to labor trying to figure out, well, what should I say? I could try to connect to this. Okay, she went to Michigan State. Yeah, she's probably going to want to hear about that, right? Or I could just have AI write it. And I don't know about you, but I don't care at all if the message got personal because you used technology. You made the message personal and you got my attention. Isn't that what the objective was? Instead of you spending an hour trying to figure out how I've sent 18 messages and they didn't work.
What about the longevity as far as in the workforce too? Because, you were talking about the difference in just the amount of people in America, right? With the birth rate going lower, the boomers retiring, things like that. We used to have a parent that would work for a company for 15, 20 years, 30 years. They'd be in the same company. Are you to the thought that people are going to continue to jump? Because at times when people continue to jump, what I've seen, even if it's in an industry, a lot of times they're starting over, each time when they jump. Is it better to stay with the company for longer?
So here's what I'm going to say. This has been a bit of a paradigm shift for me personally. I was leading a corporate TA function years ago, back before Noah was born. So more than 16 years ago. And I remember that our general manager felt very, very strongly about cradle to grave employee experience. That's what we absolutely had to strive for. And even back then I was like, hey, I don't think that's realistic anymore. He didn't really want to hear any of it. He was a fantastic leader, by the way. Shout out to Steve Risley. But he did not want to hear that. We've changed so far from that. Back then, I was like, hey, 3 to 5 years of experience is great. By the time Maddox and McKenna and Noah and Austin are working their careers, whatever their careers turn out to be, I would suggest to you that they are unlikely to even be working in one place at a time, let alone staying in one place for a very long time. So I think the very nature about how people find work is dramatically changing. The way that they engage with work, they view it so differently than we do. I don't know about you, but I do know this. We both grew up without a whole lot. We both found ways to hustle and earn money early, right? It wasn't like hustle enough to make money for this one thing. It was like, get my hustle on and like have some money, like find some things, right? Like find some way to enhance my life and what I have access to. That was my view back then. Thankfully, Noah Pike does have a work ethic. Should not keep saying his name, but I was a little bit worried for a minute. The kid gets fantastic grades. He's a leader in school and on the field, but I was a little worried about the work ethic. I will tell you, he proved to us that boy was working this summer, doing crazy moving jobs, this environmental job that I found out about after the fact, and I'm pretty sure was not actually legitimately safe for him to be doing. But you know what? It was paying a great wage, and he had a goal. He wanted money. He wanted his Jeep lifted, and he was going to do whatever it took to earn the money to get that. And I think that vignette there, that approach is going to be much more likely moving forward. So instead of it like a job that is providing for life, it is, I need this job for this experience. I need this experience for this money, and that they're going to be much more modular experiences that get stacked up together in your career.
How do you, let's flip to the employer part, how do you foster that when a lot of the messaging out there is, I had a girl, let me just give you a little quick story. I just got a chance to speak to a company, and there was a 26-year-old girl had just started with the company that I was speaking to. And she was like, she raised her hand and she said, I'm so glad that we work. We work to live as opposed to living to work. And she got that way. And I said, how long have you been with the company? She said, like, 3 months. And I said, well, how long have you been in the workforce? She said 3 months. And I was like, I would venture to say that the people that are working to live to work for a bit of time until they got to a point where they could have that type of mentality, as opposed to the messaging that is now is like, if you're not comfortable in it, if it's not exactly what you want to do, then move on. Well, if that's the case, then your son wouldn't have a lifted Jeep right now because he wouldn't be willing to do the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here's what I think. It's not going to all transform overnight in terms of expectations and what a worker wants versus what an employer wants. But I do think there's going to be a lot less living to work than there has been historically. And this is hard because I feel like one of the things that I've done in life is show my boys what a good work ethic looks like, and that you can achieve anything regardless of obstacles, right? I don't think they want the life that I've had from a work perspective. And that's hard to swallow because, I remind them it's provided quite a few benefits. That Jeep that you lifted wouldn't have existed, right? So
he would have lifted his legs is what he would have done.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. And wouldn't have had to work as hard for that. Yeah. So I do think there's a lot of shift that's underway, and it's not either or. It's not going to all happen at once, but there are other countries where people don't work the way that we work in the US, for example. I might not speak all those languages, but I've experienced a lot of places. And Americans have a little bit of a tainted view on what work is and what it should be. I've personally, I would say the last maybe 5-ish years, as I start to think about, okay, am I going to do this forever? Exactly what I'm doing now, the amount of travel, for example, and I start to think about what's next. I do have to think for myself about, I try to think that work doesn't define who I am. But I mean, the laugh that we had before we were getting started on this podcast was the joke about what my title is. And listen, people sometimes think that I'm funnier or more amazing just because I have a job title, right? Like there's this thing about like status, and I try to separate myself from it, but I don't know that if I'm being really honest, that I've completely separated my identity from my accomplishments at work. And I think that our kids are likely to view that quite differently.
Do you think that that's a conversation, or even the conversation that we're having right now is a class conversation based off because when I'm saying it, right? Okay. It's easier for us to say to our kids, do what you love, right? Do what you love. You'll never work a day in your life. We have these things that we could say to them. Although had we done what we loved, which most likely when I met Cassie, I don't think that you were doing exactly what you loved at the time. You were doing what you needed to do at the time to be able to get. So do you think that that's a class, a class system conversation, and it's different in different classes, or is it just the conversation moving forward?
I think it's a little bit of both. There's a fundamental difference between, are you struggling for your needs to be met? The last time I heard a stat, and it was several years ago, but it was something like $75,000. If you make $75,000, that is the difference between money making a material difference and it not. Some people might think it's different tiers, but it's like, okay, do you struggle or do you not struggle in one way or another? And I think the conversation's different if you struggle or if you don't, right? Yeah. It is certainly easier to say to our kids, but let's be clear. I mean, I definitely struggle with do our kids have enough work ethic? Sometimes I feel like, yeah, we're really nailing it. And other times I'm like, if you can't fold that laundry or even put away the laundry that I folded for you, I'm going to punch you in the eyeballs. So that would suggest that doing what one loves is not going to support a future for even one of my children, let alone a family should they choose to go down that path. So I do think the conversation is different, but I also think that what people are willing to tolerate from an employment experience, a culture, a boss, I think that there's a different level there because it used to be, even in our parents' generation, you just put up with it because you got a good job.
Yeah.
You get a good paycheck, and those days are long gone. I do think, though, you said something about if the conditions aren't perfectly perfect, then I'm going to leave and find something else. To some degree, that's true, but I don't think it's as true as people talk about it. Do do some of the younger generation have an unrealistic expectation? Maybe because they're coming to work for those of us that put in our dues, right? But I would argue that maybe we're the ones with the unrealistic expectations. And this is a real challenge.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure it out in our own business because younger workers tend to want to be promoted very quickly, far more quickly than we ever were. In the business we're in is serving customers. If you want to be promoted every 6 months, I mean, you've hardly figured out how to serve a customer and like what it takes, and then you want to do something else. So it's not an easy problem to solve, but I don't think it always has to be promotions up. I think that there can be, learning experiences that happen in a horizontal perspective that can be really valuable, and shifting how we think about those things can be part of the solve.
As you're placing people all over the world, how important is, we're hearing different sides as far as college education. You alluded to it earlier, and the importance of that. Say, with both of your boys going to University of Michigan and graduating from there, that is going to be something that is going to be very valuable to them. So how valuable will the being a Wolverine be to both of your boys when they graduate from there?
Oh, Kelly, pushing all the buttons. We are actually entertaining U of M. That is on Noah's consideration list. Things I thought I would never say. I've acquiesced. We will still pay. I always said that we wouldn't.
Yeah, hold on.
Spending
I want to go back to the tape because you said if he plays
Never.
at University of Michigan, you will not show up. You wouldn't go. And you would
know.
and you
I
said
know.
you would wear Michigan State jersey to the game when they played against them if he
I will
played for
still wear
University.
the Michigan State jersey, but we're all growing and maturing, Kelly. I'm trying to find some balance between what would be good for him and what my personal, let's be honest, competition has a really, really dark side to it. And some of us get like a little hyper competitive about things. Not me very often, but on occasion. So value of college education. I think there's a lot that's not working in the education system right now,
Okay.
and where it's becoming really unaffordable and a value proposition that doesn't work. On the flip side, you're seeing places that are coming forward and saying, hey, I mean, that $75,000 number I mentioned is nothing. Like if you're under 100, if you're under 150, tuition's completely free, like really trying to broaden access. I don't think college is for everyone. I don't think it needs to be for everyone. But what I think you get to do in a college setting that you don't often get to do in another setting, you get a little bit more time to grow up and figure things out. And despite what my 17-year-old self thought I knew about the world when I went away to Michigan State University, I learned a lot. Now, I wasn't just there 4 years, so maybe that's part of my learning experience. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot about people. I learned a lot about life. I learned a lot about balance. I learned a lot about missed expectations, the pressure we put on ourselves. I mean, there's so much, and it's just this, and I had a lot of fun, right? And there's just a safer way to do that than you might otherwise get. So I think there's a lot to be said for college education, but I think we do have to make it an affordable value proposition for the majority and not just the minority. And I think we have to be really open to other paths for people, trade schools, for example, skilled trades. I mean, we couldn't need those people more. I don't see a day in the horizon where an electrician is going to be done. That work's not going to be done by technology. Where a plumber, do you know how hard it is to get a really good plumber to come? And when you need them, you need them,
Oh yeah.
right? So we don't have enough people going into those fields. So I think we have to broaden our thinking, but I don't think we should abandon the college experience either.
When you look at the parallels, right? So you've held so many different roles, right? And so I'm going to go to the mother side, but I want to see the parallels because it's like being a mother, finding out that you're pregnant and then having the baby up to like 2 years is something different than being a mother of a 7 to 10-year-old up to 14. And then that's different from that 14 to 17, 18. So let's look in those realms, those three. Let's talk about the parallels of your employment or your working, when you just have the idea, right? You're pregnant, you have the job for 2 years, to the fact that you get to that kind of almost fun part where you're loving on the kids at 6, 7 years old. You're still snuggling with them. They can do a little bit for themselves, but you're still doing a bit, and you're so joyous. And then you get to the point of the, 15, 16, where hypothetically they have a Halloween party that you decorate for 3 hours, and then somebody shuts off the electricity. This is all hypothetical, just to be able to, do some stuff that you probably wouldn't want put on Instagram, but it's just on the stories. So it goes away in 24 hours. Could you draw the parallels between those areas and motherhood?
Yeah, I think early in your career, early in your tenure, just like early in motherhood, you feel a ton of pressure. You feel a boatload of pressure, but actually the world around you is really forgiving. So I think your kids are super forgiving. If you lose it on a 2-year-old, I'm not saying do that all the time, but if you lose it on a 2-year-old, they completely forget 15 minutes later and they still love you. It's kind of the same thing at work. Like, you make mistakes, and it tends to be very forgiving. I think as you mature, that saying that the days are long, but the years are short, you can experience some of that. Cielo is the longest I've ever worked anywhere. So I didn't aspire to that early in my career. I thought my first job was going to be where I retired. I have found a lot of reward and satisfaction. We're constantly evolving and changing and pushing boundaries, and that really fits well for me. But there are some times that you're just like, oh, geez, like, we've been to this rodeo. Like, what are we doing? And that can feel frustrating, and you have to really get yourself out of it, because the longer you've been there, especially as a leader, but at any level, the more responsibility you have. And when you think about hypothetical situations of raising teenagers, the responsibility, it is just so much greater. And solving problems is so much more complex than it was in the early days. The early days, okay, keep them alive, make sure they're fed, right? Change them. Like, it really was about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like just talking basic needs. Well, now, they feed themselves because their mom doesn't cook, but they can feed themselves, they can transport themselves. I certainly don't help them in the bathroom, but the magnitude of what you're working with is so different. I remember when I would have some mom guilt. I was traveling a lot because, I didn't just have one at 2. We had 2 boys when Noah was 2 and Austin was 6 months old. And there was a lot of guilt about travel and being away and missing moments. And now it's really, so I would focus. So my priority would be, I'm grateful to have a fantastic husband that was there with them. So then when I'm home, be really, really present. Put away technology, whatever it takes. Be really, really present for those moments. The reading of the books and saying the prayers and like the things. Be really, really present. Well, now I could be really, really present, and those kids don't want anything to do with me, right? Like, they're running their own agenda and have their own things going on. So now it's different. I've relinquished a lot of the guilt because that is a self-imposed emotion. It's still a constant balancing act, but it's really about being present and being available so that you can notice. If I say how to practice, go, fine, right? Okay, they go on about their way. If I instead observe body language as they walk in from practice and go upstairs to take a shower and go, something seems a little off, and I just happen to be sitting in the kitchen doing something when they come to make their own dinner, like a bowl of cereal or something, if dad's not home, then there's a chance to have a conversation and engage. And I think taking it back to work, the work perspective, I think there are a lot of parallels as a leader at work too. One of the things that I heard just like probably 6 weeks ago was to be interruptible. And so that's one of the things that I've been working on, is to be interruptible. We were at this People Leadership Summit, and it was a quote that was said by someone. And I thought, wow, that one slaps me in the face, because I get so busy either at work that I'm like, okay, well, yeah, can we get to that later? Right? Like, be interruptible. If somebody's coming to me, that was a lot easier when we were all in person than I think it is for somebody to reach out when we're in this virtual world. But it applies in my personal life too, because here I am talking about trying to be present and engaged. But if I haven't consciously thought about that, instead I'm actually trying to make dinner, do not interrupt me trying to make dinner, because chances are it's going south anyway. And so I am so focused on like trying to make that work. And it's so raw with air. I mean, I literally tried to warm up taco shells on Sunday. And I swear I read the box. It said 5 to 6 minutes on 325. And therefore I put them in for 4 minutes and they were already burned. And I was like, so like you try to interrupt me in that situation and I don't do so well. So I think it's a balancing act and a constant journey.
What are the biggest challenges you're dealing with in your work right now that you're having? I mean, you're a problem solver, and that's why one of the things that you are. But what are some of those big challenges that you're dealing with in that?
Yes, always lots of challenges. So despite the fact that we have really fantastic client logo retention, we're doing well in our progress towards true client advocacy. We are doing far better in terms of growth and expanding business than we have in past years. Demand from our existing clients is down. And so that is hard. Like, what is the balance? Our whole business is driven by hiring volumes. And so that is a challenge to find the right balance. We are doing all of these selling motions, yet not seeing the top line grow the way that we would expect it to. So that's a big challenge. I mean, right now I'm really spending a lot of time thinking about this team that has really been in place for a year. What have we done? Why do we exist? How do we keep getting better? So that's one. I think the industry and the market is changing all around us. So one of our marketing themes right now is Boss the Chaos. And I love it, because don't let disruption be happening all around you and just wait for it to settle down. It's never going to settle down, right? And so like really taking charge and like being the leader into the next foray and the next generation, and thinking about what that means. You know, our business has been enterprise RPO. That means really big companies hire us to do all of their recruitment. There are less and less companies that are hiring us to do all of that all at once globally. There's a lot more hybrid solutions. So what are the hybrid solutions today? What do they look like in the future? How do we embrace technology and automation, but only that enhances experience? So what does that mean to our business? And listen, that would be fantastic if I was just like sitting in a lab and planning for how we do it in the future. But we have to run a great business in the meantime. And so those are the biggest challenges I think that I'm focusing my attention on right now.
Let's go to the Boss the Chaos, because this stuck out to me too. It's big on you guys' website, and when I read it, I was like, oh man. Then the question came across, because obviously we want to, or what I'm taking from it, you want to not shrink back when there's chaos. Like, step through, become the boss, like work through that. How do you get that message across without the other side of it, that sometimes people are like, oh, wow, in chaos I thrive, therefore I seek it out and manufacture it, as opposed to, no, when the chaos happens, then I continue on strong, as opposed to going after and making that chaos and just attracting it like so many people do?
Yeah, manufactured chaos is definitely not what we're talking about, but you're right. I mean, there's several different types of chaos, and there are plenty of reasons why it happens. And so I think the emphasis is really on not waiting for it to be done to you or for it to subside, but get in there and lead the way. And, for me, this has really been a stretch going back to that technology thing, because if you think, I don't ever want the latest iPhone. I want okay, is mine good enough for now? Now I'm not on I don't know, an 8 or anything.
Like Rob, Rob is like on a 2. I think he just got, and he was like, I haven't wanted to switch over to the new one because I've got all these photos. And I was like, have you clicked the button that says iCloud? And he's like, man, don't tell me that. I think he just got rid of his iPhone too. Shout out to Rob and Apple for upgrading.
Yeah, we're going to have to do a little bit of work on him in terms of embracing, because there's never been less change than there was yesterday. This is just going to keep multiplying. And so figuring out where we want to be in that. And like I said, it was uncomfortable for me, but once you jump into it and think about it. So the Talent Time Machine podcast, that is hosted by our CEO, Marissa Geist. In her second season, she has these guests on, and they talk about the world of work in 2050. I love it because they're short podcasts, so they're easy to digest. And for me, it's much easier to think that far into the future than it is 3 years into the future. Because if we're thinking 3 years, I start thinking, okay, how are we going to make it work? What are the pitfalls going to be? We think that far in the future, and I'm like, oh, what could the land bring? And that's just a different place to ideate from. But one of the quotes that came from season 1, and I apologize that I don't remember who said it, but it was, there are no future facts. How empowering is that? There are no future facts. Create them. Nobody knows what this is going to be. There are plenty of hypotheses. Some of them will be more accurate than others of them will be. But get out there and help create the future facts as opposed to waiting to see what they're going to be. Because if you're waiting, you will be left in the dust. You will be in the Stone Ages.
I thought some was interesting too that she had said, tell me her first name. Geist was her last name.
Marissa.
So Marissa, shout out to you too, as I was listening. And she said, in today's society, when or maybe she was talking in the future, but she was saying how important it was to not only have a person understand what your culture is in your business, but also understand the personality of the business. Can you speak to that too? Because this one really blew my mind.
Yeah, I mean, it is true because there's the culture that's the formal things. And technically culture includes informal ways of working too, right? What's the meeting culture? What's the decision-making culture? But personality is really where it comes to life. And that is what becomes really unique, but can evolve over time, right? So the personality has to do with the people that are in the organization, right? And so I think that what we know about younger generations is that they do a ton of research before they even consider working for your company. That is not how we used to do it. I mean, when I first thought about where I was going to go to work for, I wasn't doing a bunch of reasons. Do you want to hire me? I got a resume. I'm fantastic. Do you want to hire me? Right? And so the way it happens now is so different. And so making sure that your culture isn't just about these formalities, but it really is how you bring it together, right? So for example, one of the things that we do at Cielo is we have a lot of fun. And in some companies, having fun is not viewed as being productive, and it's not viewed as a good thing. And for us, sometimes our work's really hard. Our clients are amazing, but sometimes our work's really hard. And so to be able to have fun, I don't know how much that's culture. I would suggest that that's mostly the personality. And that's something that no matter where you are, there are differences when you go globally to different regions and even to different countries within a region. But one of the things that is pretty consistent for us is that it's a fun place to be, regardless of where you are.
Well, how much of this, let me ask you this question is, how can a person get prepared? Say a McKenna at 15 years old or a Austin, is he 15 or? Is he
15, yep.
Okay. So, because they were born, when was his birthday?
September of 2009.
Okay. So she's
almost a year.
Yeah. So she's December 2008. So right around the same age. what are some of the things, 2, 3, 4 things that they could put in place now that would make them, like, give them an unfair advantage when they go into the workplace?
Well, I'm going to first say life instead of workplace because I do think that's the more important thing. And that is do chores. I was literally just reading about it again yesterday. Study after study shows kids who do chores are happier and more successful in life, without a doubt.
Hey, every
So,
kid needs, you need to send this to Maddox. You need to send this to McKenna.
I won't mention names, but one of my children is a little better at chores than the other one is. So,
Oh, do you like that
and
one more?
listen,
Do you like that one more?
definitely, I like them completely equal, Kelly. Do
Oh,
not
come
say
on.
ask that question.
Okay. All right.
Um, but it's also a little bit hard. There's chores because you have to do it. Like when I was a kid, I mean, like keep the house running, right? Like, um, then there's chores because, okay, we want you to be a responsible human, like putting away your own laundry, doing your own laundry. But then there's like this in between. And, my kids play sports all year long. They get fantastic grades. Like they're good humans, they're doing good things. So it's like, okay, so if they don't do a lot of chores, is that really a big deal? We've been kind of back and forth about this, honestly. And it's funny, the things I was so steadfast about, you will do this and you won't get paid and you will just be in order to live under our roof. Yeah, well, that's actually not how it plays out very much. So that's my first thing, like do chores. And recognize that the world is bigger than your life and your experience right now. So for the things that feel really hard, but also for your perspective on the world, realize that there's a lot more to it. Now, if we get specific about the workplace, what I would say is the people who are the most successful aren't necessarily the most brilliant that got the best grades. They're the people who work really well with others. They're the people who can cast an inspiring vision and bring people along. And those are things that they're doing in their day-to-day life, right? I could give examples of both McKenna and Austin doing that, right, in their own ways. So my other thing would probably be blaze your own trail. Do not be held back by other people's perspectives or what they think is possible or not possible. I mean, listen, did our parents ever imagine a day that we would get into a car with a complete stranger that we found on our phone and trust them to drive us somewhere, right? Like never in a million years. So you and I as parents, we can't imagine things that our kids are going to do either. So I mean that for us too. Like hopefully your parents have good ideas that are helping inspire you, but don't be held back by any of that.
So let's go back to that quote. There are no future facts, right? So Will and I were having a conversation the other day, and our conversation went to, it depends on the filter you run it through, right? So
Okay.
when we go back to that statement of there are no future facts, which is really freeing in your life, like in the personal side, in your family and all those things, what truths or principles do you run them through as far as filter them through, and that will be the same today, tomorrow, and in the future if there's no future facts?
Mm-hmm. Well, so I think there's a difference. The future facts, meaning what exactly will happen, exactly how things will look. We can't know what those things are. We can help create it. But part of how we help create it is through the filter by which we view life, right? So for me, I giving to others and serving others, like that is not something that is like a nice to have or if I felt like that is for me, like I believe that to whom much is given, much is required. And like, that is my responsibility. And when I look at life through that perspective, then it changes things. I think also, if I give you a really personal example, this be interruptible really hit me recently. So much like all families, ours is complex and there are plenty of challenges in it. And there's some different responsibilities. And one of the responsibilities, well, amongst me and my siblings, and my sister has taken on the responsibility of being guardian for our brother, John. He's technically our half brother. He is functions about the level of a 4-year-old on a really good day, and there's a lot of needs there. And she really, really carries this burden almost independently with the help of her husband. I mean, we play a role occasionally is how I could probably best describe it. And he was recently had to go in the hospital, and me being the person who likes to know what to anticipate and who always has more going on than they have hours in the day, I would like to plan for things. And so she'd been in the hospital with him, and I think we sort of thought he was getting out, and he wasn't getting out. And on a Sunday morning, she asked if any of us could come and relieve her. And I was literally, my shoulders went down when I read the text message, and I'm like, I hadn't had any break. I was really looking forward to a relaxing day. Andrew was at work. The boys were going to help me with some Christmas decorations, which brings total joy to my house and to me personally. And I was like, man, and in my head, I'm like, why didn't she ask us sooner? Why didn't she let me plan? Does she know how far and I was literally, ooh. And then there was a moment that I was completely interruptible in my entire train of thought. And I said, there is no answer to even consider. And I sent a text and said, I can be there by noon. Here's what I'm going to do to, I got to take care of a couple things and drive 2 hours to get there. And the whole way driving there, I thought, wow, thank you, Lord, for making me interruptible in that moment in my own train of thought, because how selfish was that? But also, how rewarding was it? Because I actually had a 2-hour drive each way that turned out to be all the relaxation and thinking time that I needed in my own brain. And she was so extraordinarily grateful. She'd been I'm embarrassed to say this. I bet at that point, she'd been in the hospital with him night and day for 8 days. Wow. And I was literally like, oh, you couldn't give me a day to plan to be there? So it's interesting how our perspective can change things.
So,
and that lens by which you're looking at the world, right?
Yeah.
And considering things.
Well, it goes right into, I had this question or viewpoint because we just had our men's group, and one of the guys was talking about that he had prayed for something. He was working, and it was things were going really well in one aspect. It was going really well financially, but he referred to it as soul-sucking work that he was doing to be able to provide an incredible living as far as financially. At the time, he started to pray for, man, I really want to do what I want to do, right? And that prayer was answered, but that prayer was answered with not as much financial gain as what the other one was. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how does a person deal with when they pray for, like I've been very conscious of this. I don't pray for patience because then God tests my patience, right? I don't pray for strength because then he's like, look, I'm put you in this place and you're going to have to be strong. And I don't want to do that. So I've avoided God that way. But when a person is like with you know, you're praying for, I need some time. And God is saying like, I'm going to give you time on the way there, 2 hours, on the way back, 2 hours in the car, but it's not going to be the way that you would like it. How do you help people to be able to deal with that part of it and the reality of it?
I don't know if I help other people. I'm still trying to help myself.
How do you get through it? Like, you know, do you yell or do you?
I try not to yell. I know what my coping mechanisms are, right? Uh-huh. So I know that taking a minute to pause and like step out of the situation. I know that going to the gym. I also know that just going and really giving myself quiet space, that all those things make a really big difference for me in how I respond. Because here's the thing. We can't control what's going to happen. We only control how we respond to it. And it's a constant work in progress. I mean, sometimes I'm nailing it, right? Like, oh, completely unexpected, no problem, I got it. And other times it's like the smallest deviation from what I thought was going to happen. And I'm like, my anxiety level goes up so much. And I don't completely know where that comes from. I do think some of it was a lack of control in circumstances when I was growing up. And so for me, that is empowering when I understand hey, this is how I am, right? This is why, then I can handle it a lot better. It's also interesting. I do transfer that to other people. If I really understand you, then I can typically deal with almost anything. If I don't really understand you, then I might not give you the same grace that I should in a given circumstance or a given situation.
Where do you think that that part comes from in you? So, I mean, I'm just in studying people throughout my life. Sometimes people will say, "This is who I am. This is my makeup." And for me, I always challenge it because I say, like, if I took you and I took you to another country, raised you in another country with a different family, would that still be you? And most of the time, the answer is no. Right.
Right.
So what are the contributing factors for you, maybe growing up, whatever it was, that causes that if you know them, you've got it. If you don't know them, then maybe it's a different scenario. Where do you think that comes from?
Mm, I think really high expectations of people. But it's interesting the excuses that I'll give myself or the people that I'm closest to in a lot of circumstances. I apply it differently, I think, to my husband and boys than I do perhaps other people in my life. Um, but I also think, I mean, really, it comes down to I'm more judgmental than I should be or would like to be. And I think it's that judgment that is causing but once you're one of my people in any way, it doesn't have to be like super close. Like once I understand, then that whole paradigm shifts for me. So I do agree with you that, there's some component of us that we are who were born, but there's a whole lot that is also the circumstances and how we choose to respond to them. And it's not just us because, I didn't just know how to rise up to a difficult circumstance. I often get feedback at work from people on the team. Wow, you handled that hard situation so well. Like, how do you learn to do that? I'm like, when you've been in 1,000 hard situations, you just cultivate a skill. And so that's where you look back, every challenge, every road you've traveled that might not have been the one you had aspired to or planned to be on, you learn through that and you grow through that. And that's all practice for what's to come. So I think that the people around you, the people you surround yourself with make a really big difference in terms of keeping a positive mental attitude and focusing on continuously getting better. I've gotten away from like setting all these big New Year's goals and aspirations because quite frankly, then I just fail so fast and that feels defeating to me. See, back to our conversation about competitiveness. I'm competitive mostly with myself. And instead it's just like, okay, what are the 2 or 3 things that I'm focusing on right now? And I increasingly observe that they apply at work and at home. Sometimes there's more emphasis on one place than the other, but I'm one person. I'm one authentic human being. And so I'm usually working on things that apply in both situations.
How do you deal with the multifaceted part that you just kind of alluded to? How does a person do that? Because a lot of times when say a person at work sees you, they see this, incredibly intelligent, you continue to grow, you're incredible at what you do. They see that and they have that expectation. Then most of the time they don't get a chance to hang out with you when you guys go to your, lake house or whatever it is. And you're just, there's a different facet to you. How do you deal with the expectations? And when I say this, the reason why I'm asking you is because being a woman, there's more pressure on you than there is for me. Right. And I would like to think, oh no, everyone thinks exactly the same, but you alluded to it earlier about the mom guilt. There's the mom guilt, there's the wife guilt, there's the work guilt, there's all those things. How do you manage or deal with the multifaceted part of you and just be okay in that scenario where you're at?
Yeah. So I think you are right that everybody doesn't see all of your dimensions in a given situation. And therefore, they might think it's unattainable for themselves, for example. So for me, it's about just being open and vulnerable. And you have to be careful because there are times when if I am too casual and just thinking I'm really funny, which my dad once told me my brother was the funny one, it was not me. I was like, 14 and I still remember it. So, always trying to be a little bit funny. But if I'm trying to be really funny and I'm standing up with other executives and presenting to a whole bunch of people, they're not getting the jokes. It's not always respectful to the other people around. So it's like finding the tone and the place to do it. But I think the one thing it goes back to, well, probably two things: vulnerability, be willing to be vulnerable, and being your authentic self. I can be my authentic self, and that doesn't mean that I am doing the same thing in all situations or showing up exactly the same way. There are times to be formal. It's just like there's a time to be firm with your children and there's a time just to have a great time with them, right? So it's understanding the time and the place, but being authentic. And what people want, I think more than anything, just be open and be vulnerable.
How can you do that too at work? Like, and I just want to stay on that subject for a second, because I think that when a person says vulnerable, then we instantly go to the meaning of it, right? We were talking about this in our men's group today, where we said there's 3 parts to any conversation. Number 1, there's context. Yeah. Then there's content, like what you're saying. And then there's the culture of which you're living in at the time. And if we don't understand all 3 of those things, sometimes we could get in challenges. Right.
Yeah.
And so how can a person start to work that muscle of understanding the context, understanding the content, and understanding the culture, so that way they can, not that you said you had to be all things for all people, but you were being firm with your kids at times, you're being, playful with them at times. How do they work that muscle so they'll know the difference between the two, or between all of them?
It's like anything. It's practice makes perfect. I can think of times at work I didn't get it right. I can think of times at home that I didn't get it right. And so it's continuously practicing, not assuming that because I tried it once and it didn't work, that doesn't work. It means, okay, you didn't have the context right, or that wasn't the right culture, right? Like, so it is continuing to practice and understand, seeking counsel from people that you really trust. I think you get to a point in your career where some people are going to be honest with you, but maybe not everyone. A lot of people are going to tell you what you want to hear, right? And so knowing who your trusted sources are that will really give you the candid feedback that, certainly can lift you up and raise you up, but helps you grow at the same time. I think that is also certainly helpful. And, you don't even have to ask for it. When it comes to kids, they're real blunt about when they think you're getting it wrong. And so sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not, but take all the feedback in.
Where do you wish that you could be? Let's take it to the mom side. And I think that you're a phenomenal mom. I see the product of your kids. I see those kind of things. But when you're looking at you, where would you like to step it up in the mother side?
Yeah, that's fantastic. I wish that I didn't go toe to toe with my kids on occasion. It's not an everyday or all the time thing, but I wish sometimes I would be better at picking my battles. I wish that what I aspire to with those boys more, that the end all be all to me is that they still want to be with us 20 years from now, no matter what their life circumstances are. Because, I have boys. And so more times than not, the girls' family, kind of that's where they gravitate towards. So that's like a big life goal in terms of where they want to be. We're at the stage at 15 and 16. They think we're the worst on a million things. They, everything we say is wrong. I'm not super caught up in that day to day, but just wondering, do I have the balance right for trying to lead them towards success versus just letting them figure it out?
What do you wish that they knew about you?
What do I wish that they knew about me? I wish more than anything that what they felt was that they were the most important thing in the world. I think that they do sometimes. I don't know if they do all of the time based on where I spend my time. Even that philanthropy stuff you were talking about, that's a big time commitment. And so every choice you make is where to invest your time. So I hope that that's what they know and believe in their core.
how do you know like when to serve? Because I've heard this, we were just talking about it the other day, where there was a person that was in the ministry and they were like, well, I'm serving God. And they were like, yeah, but you're not spending any time with your family. And they were like, no, but I'm serving God. This is what my purpose is. And they actually had to have a little bit of an intervention with them. This was an extreme sense, but I looked at it, I was like, wow, how many people in the name of service actually cause challenges in other areas. And this particular individual was having challenges in their family, but they were saying, well, they just need to deal with it because I'm doing good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's no perfect recipe for success. I think it's really looking yourself in the mirror, because for me, I know that this is important to me as a human. I know that it's a good example for my children. And quite frankly, Andrew gives back a lot too, even if he's not starting a nonprofit. It's like we're all in this together, right? And so it's also finding the balance. So, okay, my family should not suffer because I choose to do this service. Therefore, what else am I willing to give up? What are the things that I'm not going to spend my time? Because it's all about how you choose to spend your time and not letting your schedule dictate your life, but being really intentional about that can make a big difference.
So you have creature comforts, so we can agree on this. You have creature comforts in your life right now that you didn't have at a point where maybe even when we met, but then we go back further as a kid, there's more creature comforts. In the event that things were to go south, what is the one or two things that you would not be willing to give up, even if things went bad?
Oh, like things that I wouldn't give up?
No, I'm saying like, okay, so like with my wife, I asked her, I said, hey, baby, if it gets to a point, like when we do a vacation, whatever it is, would you rather just move to a different, like go to a different hotel and go to a different hotel with different amenities, everything like that? And she was like, no, I just stay less time. She was like, we'll go on vacation for like an hour. You know what I mean? So there's certain things that she's like, I'm not. And for me, okay, here it is. I'm not willing. I don't care whatever happens, and it could go south. I'm not willing to give up name brand cereal because I had cereal in a bag. I don't care. We will be on the street. We will be, I'll have a sign up, but we will have some Blueberry Crunch and some Count Chocula, and it will not be the store brand. I promise you.
That's hilarious. Okay. A couple of things come to mind. I would say that I won't give up having, I don't want to say luxury experiences because that's an exaggeration, but experience meaningful. I would rather have one experience even for an hour than I would staying at the Motel 6. And I know that's horrible. There's a lot of people out there that's a fantastic vacation. But what I've learned is that I do like nice things and I like to do nice things. Uh-huh. I love the experience. There's nothing better than when our family of four is on vacation together and getting an experience for the first time. But I would also say I've learned that I really like space. So I didn't grow up living in really big houses. And you would think that I was fine. Remember that place in Chicago? I mean, that was like 1,500 square feet in downtown Chicago. People would think like, that's amazing. My heart would palpitate. Like I felt like the walls were closing in on us because we were on 3 levels. Uh-huh. We had our first kid. So there's stuff everywhere. And for me, bossing the chaos includes like having some level of like, I can't have all that. I need some space. That is something that I really, really value. Now it can look different. It doesn't have to be a big house, uh-huh. But space to be able to be, I think that would be pretty important. Now, maybe it's a really spacious box. I'm not sure if I can envision that right now, but having some space.
You also had a degenerate on the bottom floor too.
On occasion, that didn't help with the feeling.
I just remember
the degenerate sounded like this guy. In case
oh my gosh! Well, I tell you, I remember. Well, hypothetically, this degenerate. I remember hearing the story about the degenerate, like you guys were on vacation or something like that, and stepping in the winter, stepping into that bottom floor, and this unnamed degenerate had taken his shoes off because it was snowy outside and stepped into 3 inches of freezing cold water on that bottom floor. That was scary. I mean, just because like when you step down into it and it, like you don't realize it and then it freezes. And then also I remember that degenerate convincing his wife at 7.5 months pregnant to sleep on an air mattress that deflated. So it felt like we were in a taco by the time that we woke up.
I know. I look back, I'm like, oh, poor Brooklyn. But here's the thing. Everybody prioritizes different things, and some of us, I think, prioritize a really comfy bed. But I will tell you what, my kids wouldn't prioritize that. They would prioritize the things we get to do versus the kind of bed they're going to sleep in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got this big old house, we've got beds, and we've got places, and their friends come over, and they are all sleeping all over couches. I mean, I walked in the other day, and Austin and his 3 friends, like, one of them is lying literally like a pencil face down on the floor. I'm like, is he okay? Oh, yeah, he pops up, he's fine. Like, they don't care about that. They just wanted to be together. So it is interesting how that shapes you. I, for one, hope that I never sleep on an air mattress again, but you never know. It could happen.
It could. I want to find, you should invent the air mattress that doesn't lose air through the night. I've never found one. Even the nicest ones, they always end up in the middle, taco, like completely, or it feels like, especially the one at my brother's house that he had, it felt like a Ziploc bag that he had blown a little bit of air into. And then by the end of the night, if I would move over on the edge, my wife would go up in the air. It was like one of those things that you go on the lake with.
So I think we're going to flip our thinking. I'll invent something for sure.
Okay. Sounds good.
However, we've gotten rid of all air mattresses. What we have in our house, like we have like 4 extra sleeping mats. They're really cushiony, like they're great to sleep on when we need extra places. But I think the invention that needs to take place is like, how could that be more portable? Because these things are like, I mean, like one of them folded up is like really big and huge. And so the invention is we need something with that level of comfort that you could travel with, like you could move it around.
Would you want to travel with it? Were you talking about in a car? Like if you're riding your bike over to your friend's house?
Well, I could be riding bike. I mean, think back to the days we probably borrowed that air mattress from someone. I mean, we probably didn't even own it. And so like you want it to be a little bit portable. Like the air mattresses, sometimes we take them up to the lake because the lake is fantastic. We have this place. It is fantastic.
Yes.
When I say that this place is not fancy, I am not exaggerating. And we put a lot of people in. Like they think the Beverly Hillbillies are coming. Like we've got like RV in the driveway. We've got tents. Like we've got people sleeping everywhere they can be sleeping. And so we bring the air mat or the sleeping mats up. Do you know how much space 4 of those takes? It feels like the back of a Suburban. And so that just gets a little impractical. We just need a little transportability.
I think so. I mean, that kind of stuff is, I mean, I haven't found one yet. You remember the love sacks? Do you remember the love sack phase that I had?
Got love sack.
Do you guys have?
Wait. Let me tell you, you've inspired us. So the boys have 2 big love sacks in the game room.
Yes.
We have a love sack couch in the basement. We have love sack in the upstairs living room at the lake house, and we have love sack sectional in the downstairs living room at the lake house. It is the number one thing that we're like, get us some love sacks.
Did you guys get the stereo system in the love sack couch?
No.
Okay.
That's where I put the limit.
My brother Brad didn't. He was so excited, and he bought this thing and put the stereo system in it. It had the bass going through, but that's like the worst idea on the planet. Like, why would you want to sit on the couch and while you're watching a movie, the bass is coming through the couch? And he had that thing, I swear, for like 3 weeks, and then was like, "This is the worst idea of all time."
They do have a great return policy, so I hope he got his money back.
I think he did. He gave that one back. But I mean, for any of you out there, buy the love sacks, but not the stereo system. inside.
I would agree with that advice. I would agree. And know that in a pinch, a love sack could sleep, I don't know, 4 grown adults if necessary. So maybe that's better than the sleeping mats, the original sleeping mat.
Well, speaking of sleeping mats, when you guys used to come, the house with the green carpet. I don't know if you remember my house that I had the dark green carpet. Is a very good. I had an interior decorator, and they were like, "Look, you need forest green. Forest green is going to be a good color for a house. It's very inviting. It's lovely." At that time, obviously, like that's right around, like you come in right around that time as far as you and Andy getting together. You call him Andrew. I still call him Andy. Most of us just call him Pike. When we do, there's friends, I mean, from all walks of life, from early ages. Do you still have the friends that you had when you were in 4th, 5th, 6th grade, and how important do you think that is if you didn't?
So I do not have friends from that time period in my life. Actually, we were just talking this weekend that I don't even have, I am still friends with people from high school. I do not have the relationship that you guys have. One of the things that we hope for our boys is that that they understand that number one is your brother, but that they have a close circle of friends that are really, truly friends for life. Because that is something, it was overwhelming the first time I met many of you.
Why?
But it
Why
is,
is that? Take us back to that point when you're saying it's overwhelming, because I mean, my wife was a little bit different. Brooklyn was a little bit different because she still got her girls from when they were in like 6th, 7th grade. So when she came into it, she was like, "Oh, okay." But for a lot of people and a lot of other spouses, even in the group, it's like, what is happening here?
yes. So I'd heard a lot about these people and about these friends, and I knew that there were these long-standing friendships. And the first time I met you all was a birthday weekend. It was your birthday weekend, but that also coincided with I went to my friends to Vegas Memorial Day weekend. We'd done this a couple times, and we were doing it again. And so I think I was like part-time with my friends and part-time with you guys. And I literally walk in, and it was like, you were not telling politically correct jokes when you were talking about each other. I mean, you would think that you people were arch enemies. And I'm not a shy person, but I was like, whoa, okay, let me see if I can get the feel for what's going on. So it was, it's intense. I mean, it is a brotherhood. I mean, there is a level of closeness and love and care that everybody should want to have for themselves and for their children. But it's a little bit to get your head around. It's a little bit to get your head around.
Well, it's interesting. One a person said the other day, I can't remember. I think it was a comedian, but he said if you don't have a group text, that you would get canceled if people saw it, then you don't have real friends.
That's true. And just don't send the wrong message to the wrong group text. Right?
Well, you talk about the multifaceted part of it. It's incredible because there's inside of our group too. There's so many individual relationships, and then there's the group side of it, and it's unreal. But it's so common to us because, and it's so common that hey, say like with your husband, I've known your husband since 9th grade. I mean, he was in 9th grade. I was in 8th, right? And to know him all the way through, to know when he got the motorcycle, when he got his driver's license, when he got I remember when he came in and he was the first person to drive a stick shift, and going through those things to all these different aspects of life. I just think that it's incredible. How can we foster that with our kids?
Be real and genuine and authentic, right? Like the thing about this group is you are all real. There is nobody holding back and like trying to pose for a moment about something. Like there's a level of realness and authenticity. There's also a level of investment, and it looks different over the years in how you all spend time together. But I will tell you, our friends here in the hood get real. It's like the big joke that Andrew leaves the group text. He does not have any time when the shenanigans start. Yet you guys will send 200 text messages while we are sleeping at night, and you don't ever get silence. There's no canceling of that group. And so I think there's just a certain amount of investment, right? You've got to be willing to invest and and be invested in, even when the seasons change and it looks a little bit different.
It just happened the other night because you know Hoffman, right?
I
So
do.
Hoffman, I guess we started another text group because somebody was like, "Hey, let's just start another one, add somebody," but he didn't get added back to it. So then he was like, "Why didn't I get added back?" And then we added him back to one, and I swear I landed at probably 8 o'clock my time, which is 11 o'clock your time. So your husband was getting, I mean, he got blown up for. I mean, I'm sure he silenced that one though. Did he, or did he just not respond because he
Yeah.
doesn't love us?
He definitely just silences it when he goes to bed. I mean, he has to get up at 5:30 every morning, so he is not tolerating your BS in the middle of the night. Like when he gets up in the morning, he leads me to believe that he's like reading news. I'm pretty sure he's catching up on the text. And I don't know about 99% of what takes place in those text messages, nor do I need to. Like, it's kind of like your teenage boys. There's some things like just let that be and let that play itself out.
How do you deal as a teenage boy mom? How do you deal with girls coming in? Are you the mom that is like, my boy walks on water, or are you the? My mom was really big on this as kids. She was like, if I ever see you talk to a lady outside of the way that you're supposed to, then I will beat you. Like, you don't have to wait for her to get mad at you. So which type of mom?
I so when it comes to girls, it's different than in life. In life, if I hear that something's happening, there's rumblings about something, I'm instantly assume my boys are guilty. I Even though they don't have a track record of being guilty, I know that good kids do dumb things too, and I'm just waiting for the really dumb stuff to happen. So I assume that they've done something dumb.
Okay.
When it comes to girls, I honestly think I'm a little bit protective. I think I'm a little like, I hope she's appreciating how amazing he is. I mean, they have to be respectful and good and kind like that. I feel like that's table stakes, but I don't know, maybe I think that too much. Austin's had this girl for several months. We talk about said girl. We've discussed introductions, but he still hasn't introduced us. So I don't know what that says. And I'm pretty sure that she's a badass. She plays for one of the top girls ice hockey teams in the state of Michigan, and I was
Wow.
like, yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what are some of your gauges? Like my gauges are, I want them to address me. Like I want them to say hello. I'm not addressed by my first name. So if I mean, you could use my first name, but it's Mr. in front. It's Mr. C, Mr. Kelly, whatever it is. That's a non-negotiable. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not even. But the other part is that I want them to address me when they leave. If they come over the house, McKenna just got a little boyfriend. When he leaves, well, he's 16. He's more. I mean, I'm bigger than him, so he's little. You know what I mean? I'm sizing him up. You know what I mean? Or I'm calling Andy. Like I'm calling Andy and have Andy come out for a vacation. You know what I mean? To come and regulate. But those are some prerequisites for me, right? And I didn't know some of the prerequisites that my daughter had put in play by what she's seen. And I asked her the other day, and she was like, Dad, I stand in front of the door and make sure he opens it. And I was like, well, what? Like, this is awesome. She was like, it's so strange because he compliments me on all these things, and then finally, he'll compliment me on how beautiful I am. And she was like, I would like him to say that first, but it reminds me of the things that you say to me because you don't say that I'm beautiful first. You always say the other things. What are some of the prerequisites that you have as a mama? And then some of the things that have kind of shocked you, kind of like what I was shocked with McKenna.
Yeah, so I definitely think I'm very comfortable with Miss Cassie or Mr. Andrew, but you can't just call us by our first name. So I don't know where some people use last names here, but I think it started in Indiana. We kind of use the first name. So that's a super important one. What I'm hoping to see when I get a chance to meet the girls is that they're not completely meek. I try really, really hard to not be um, intimidating, Mrs. Pike, right? But please don't be a confident young woman. That's my desire. I've seen some of both, I would say. Although I did just hear actually, so one of Noah's friends' parents was over here and we were talking something about the boys. They've been friends for quite a long time. He's like, oh yeah. He told me straight up, I mean, we don't worry about Miss Pike, but oh, Mr. Pike, Mrs. Pike, that's the one, like, she's a badass. And I was like, oh no, like, I hope it's not in a super bad way. We'll see. So I also want them to I feel like my expectations are real low. Just be willing to engage with the adults. Like, just be willing to have some level of conversation. Now, your first time meeting is different than over time. But I will tell you, my favorite friends of the boys are the ones who also, they're not afraid to do a little something. If the boys are clearing the counter, like, okay, that they're going to help clear the counter. Now, I don't think that that's a deal breaker depending on how long they've been around. But I will also tell you this. I have learned that the most overly respectful boys to my face are rarely the most well-behaved when the adults aren't around. So like, there's this fine line of like the swim lane to be in, that it's not just total BS, that you're putting one out there to pull one over the grown-up's eyes,
Did you ever have to put your foot down? My mom, I remember one time I lost my mind when I was in high school, and it was one of those times where, like, I believe there's crazy in all of us. It just takes the right person to bring it out. And that person was in my life. And I remember my mom was always just like, she was very, she was there, and she was there for me and things like that. But at that point, she just put her foot down. She's like, I'm stepping in here. That one's out of here. Get out of here. And I had that experience probably 2 years ago with Maddox. Now, it was weird because it was his first little girlfriend, and she was a cutie, and she came around and all the stuff. And it was right around Christmas time. And we were sitting in the kitchen, and we were like, oh, we're going to put up Christmas decorations, right? Mm-hmm. And she was there, and I can't remember what she was doing. And I was like, blank, hey, why don't you, help out, bring in some of the things, because, if you're going to be here, you're going to pitch in some work. And she was like, oh no. And then she just got up and left, like just went home. And I was like, I was so glad that they broke up like a week later. You know what I'm saying? Like,
thank God for the short-lived middle school romance, right? I don't think there have been any that we just had to stop. You know what I remember? This is one that really sticks out, is probably middle school, early middle school though. Uh-huh. Austin's downstairs in the game room, and these kids can multitask in a way that, I don't think I would ever have the ability to do, but he's playing video games. He's on FaceTime on his iPad with his friends. And the calls just keep coming in. And I mean, when I say coming in, I mean, it's like ring, ring, ring. And I'm like standing there having a conversation, like, why are you being so rude? You just keep like silencing that. Because in my head, I'm thinking, you're trying to hide something from me. Because remember, I always assume that they've done something wrong. Not saying that's right, people. And he was like, Mom, they're having a slumber party. They don't ever stop. And boy, was that the truth. And I was like, oh, you got to have some boundaries. Different boys and different girls behave differently, but the girls, there were some boy crazy girls at a really, really young age. And I remember another time taking them into Dairy Queen, like after a soccer practice, and like literally the seas parting, like the girls like, oh my God. And I was like, we're literally in like the 6th grade. What is going on right now? This is madness. Might have even been 5th grade. It might have been before middle school. So like, I'm always like deferring to, you've got to be polite. You've got to be nice. You've got to include everyone. Well, guess what? You can't always be nice to the girls because sometimes they are attack dogs. And you also can't include everyone because sometimes you end up with a Halloween party that is so out of control that no one knows what to do with themselves. So like, it's funny how these ideas that seem good in principle don't apply in all situations.
Cassie, you know why I started the podcast? Because my two kids, right? You know Maddox, you know McKenna. You're texting McKenna and she's not responding, and I want to apologize for that. She does read them, and she is very inspired, and she is like, I mean, she's blown away by you, and you're a phenomenal example to her. She just does not return texts, like seriously, does not, and she won't return mine. I'll send her little memes, whatever it is, try and kick it, and she's like, I'll just leave you on red. But, and little Maddox too, now he's 13 years old, and he's still snuggling a little bit, which is awesome. He doesn't like me to say that to his boys, but he does.
You should not say that to his boys.
I know. I don't say it to his boys, but I'm saying, like, if his boy was listening on here, he's a very masculine guy. You know what I mean? He's very strong. That's what they should hear. But what advice would you have for Maddox and McKenna from Aunt Cassie?
Okay, so first of all, McKenna not returning my texts is probably because she's a 15-year-old girl and I put too many words. The boys tell me I don't use the appropriate abbreviations to communicate effectively via text. I'm sure that has to do with it. So I would say different things to them. McKenna, I would say, do not let anyone dim your light. You were made for absolute greatness in this world, and walk your own path and create your own future. Don't let anyone stand in the way of that with their expectations or what they think. I think it's a really hard world for girls, and teenage girls in particular. Yeah. Maddox, I would say, man, you are writing your own script. You are creating your own future. So there are no future facts, and don't let anybody convince you otherwise. Go out there and keep making the world your own, because his personality is second to none, and the world deserves more Maddox in it.
Wow. Thank you so much. Honestly, it's always a pleasure. Like, I feel like I have an unfair advantage because I get to have these kind of conversations with Cassie, where, I mean, obviously in the group, we're generally, giving you a hard time about Michigan State or, something like that. Like, the fact that University of Michigan won the national championship, and I just wanted to kind of drive that one home, but we're giving you a hard time, but I've always been fascinated. I've always been fascinated by you. Again, I think that there's a lot of people who try and prove their intelligence or try and prove that they're good at what they do, but you've never done that. You just are incredibly, when you're talking about authentic, you are that. But the power that you have, and it comes from the fact that when you know and you have that confidence, you don't have to prove it to anybody. But I think I have an unfair advantage because I get to have these kind of conversations with you.
Thank you so much. I can never underestimate how much it means for people to tell you what they really think, because that's not what we tell ourselves, right? We're always questioning, we're critical of ourselves. So thank you for the kind words and the opportunity to share. I believe that part of my purpose in the world is to inspire and influence people. I've just been practicing a lot. That's all. It is not that I was born this way or have it all figured out. I'm just on the journey. So I appreciate the chance to hear the kind feedback, but also to talk with you today.
Well, I appreciate it. And I want to have you on more. I'm going to consistently call you or text you and let you know that I want to have you on. And I want to tell you how much it means to me. Like, every now and again, you'll send out like whether it be a link or a picture of the podcast and say, hey, I like this one. And it just honestly, doing this project has been, I've gotten a chance to do a lot of projects in my life, but it's the one that I felt the most in my heart about. And it felt very similar because when I went into the professional beauty industry years ago, I remember people almost being like, they didn't understand it. And when I started off on this journey 4 years ago, a lot of people didn't understand what it was. And some people still don't, which is completely okay. But I want you to know that your support of it has been tremendous, and it means the world to me.
Well, thank you. Please hug your wife for me. I'll be texting McKenna shortly. Don't worry.
Please.
And see if I can go without a response again.
That's awesome. Well, Cassie, it's incredible. I put the links for it's Uplift Milford. I put the links in the bio for that, for your company too, so people can kind of see the scale of what it is, but also connect the human being behind it, which I think is amazing. So I want to thank you so much. If you could stick around for a second after this commercial, it would be awesome. Yeah. But Cassie, you're officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and
Thank
soul.
you.
Nothing more on my mind. I got two shines, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised.